The cold settled heavily over Cleveland that morning, the kind of bitter, unmoving chill that crept beneath clothes and pressed itself against the bones. Anna McBride moved quickly through it, her breath rising in uneven clouds as she hurried down the cracked sidewalk toward the nearest drugstore. Her 10-month-old son had been coughing through the night, and by dawn his fever had climbed high enough to send a shock of fear through her exhausted body. She had no time to think about how little sleep she'd gotten or how thin her coat felt. Her mind held only one goal: get the medicine, get home, and hope the fever broke. 32 years old and already worn to the edges, Anna felt the weight of the past 3 months dragging behind her like a chain. Widowhood had arrived without warning, leaving her with 4 children, mounting debts, and a nurse aide salary that barely held the walls of their apartment together. Grief layered itself over her days like frost, but there was no space to fall apart, not when a baby was sick, not when 3 other children needed breakfast, coats, and reminders to be kind to each other. She clutched the small bottle of medicine against her chest as she exited the store. The wind cut sharper now, stinging her eyes. She blinked against it and stepped off the curb, thinking only of getting home before the baby's breathing worsened. She never saw the car. A horn blared. Tires screeched on ice, and a hand, small but startlingly strong, closed around Anna's arm and yanked her backward. She stumbled, breath catching as her feet hit the sidewalk again. The car slid past the spot where she had stood a heartbeat earlier, the driver shouting something out the window before disappearing down the street. For a moment, Anna couldn't speak. Her heart hammered painfully against her ribs as she turned to see who had pulled her to safety. A homeless woman stood beside her, bundled in layers that didn't quite match, her face lined and pale from the cold. Yet her eyes were steady, clear, almost gentle. She looked nothing like the people Anna often saw huddled under overpasses or curled into blankets near the bus terminal. There was a dignity about her posture, a quiet composure that felt strangely familiar. I didn't even look," Anna whispered, still shaken. "It's all right," the woman said softly. "The mornings are slippery. Anyone could have missed it." Anna finally managed to steady her breathing. "Thank you. I should have been paying attention." The woman nodded once, then glanced at the bottle of medicine Anna held as if she already understood the story behind it. "You're in a hurry. A child sick at home." Anna hesitated but nodded. "If you ever need help," the woman continued gently, "with the little ones, I know how to care for children. I could sit with them for a while if you need rest." Anna stiffened. She didn't know this woman, didn't know her name or her past, but there was no pushiness in the offer, only quiet sincerity. And for a moment, Anna felt a whisper of relief, something like hope pressing faintly against all the exhaustion. She studied the woman's face again, noticing the way she held herself upright despite the cold, despite everything. "What's your name?" Anna asked. "Martha," the woman replied. "Martha Coleman." Anna nodded slowly. Something in her chest eased. She still didn't know why, but she believed Martha meant every word. And though neither of them knew it yet, this cold morning on a Cleveland sidewalk was the beginning of everything that would follow. The walk back to Anna's apartment felt longer than usual. The wind sharper as afternoon shadows settled across the low-income Cleveland neighborhood she and her children called home. The buildings stood close together, their brick facades faded and weather-beaten, but it was what she could afford. As she led Martha toward the narrow stairwell that climbed to her second-floor apartment, Anna wondered, briefly, anxiously, whether she was making a reckless choice. But each time doubt rose, the image of Martha pulling her from the street returned, steadying her steps. Inside the apartment, warmth hit them first, followed by the sudden patter of small feet. Emily and Grace raced down the hallway before Anna could warn them to slow down. Colin appeared behind them, holding the baby carefully on his hip. Their eyes widened at the sight of the unfamiliar woman, standing beside their mother. "This is a friend," Anna said, only half certain the word fit. "Her name is Martha. She helped me today." The children didn't hesitate. Grace stepped forward first, her curls bouncing as she peered up at Martha with unabashed curiosity. "Hi, Grandma," she said brightly, as if the introduction had already been given. Anna's breath caught. She opened her mouth to correct her daughter, but the look on Martha's face stopped her. The older woman's eyes softened, glistening unexpectedly. Her hand trembled a little as she reached out to brush a stray curl behind Grace's ear. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, voice unsteady. "I haven't been called that in a long time." Colin shifted the baby in his arms and asked, "Do you know how to hold him?" His tone wasn't cautious, just hopeful. Martha nodded, and the 9-year-old moved forward without fear. Anna watched as Martha lifted the infant gently and securely, her posture instinctive, almost practiced. The baby settled immediately against her shoulder, letting out a small sigh. It struck Anna then how natural Martha seemed among them, as though she had stepped into a space she once knew. Martha blinked quickly and cleared her throat. "Your children are beautiful," she murmured. "They remind me of—" She stopped, confusion dimming her voice. "I'm sorry, I can't quite remember." Anna felt the familiar pinch of sympathy. "It's all right. You don't have to explain." She showed Martha around the small apartment, pointing out the pantry, the crib, the stack of folded blankets, the basket of toys in the living room. She explained the evening routine: dinner around 6, bedtime stories, lights out by 8. Martha listened attentively, holding each instruction with surprising clarity. Anna reheated leftover soup and placed a bowl in front of Martha. "It isn't much," she said. "It's warm," Martha replied. "That's more than I've had lately." As the hour for her night shift approached, Anna bundled herself again, trying to ignore the pulsing anxiety in her chest. Leaving 4 children with a stranger should have terrified her. Yet when she glanced toward the living room, where Martha sat cross-legged on the rug, the baby in her lap and the older kids leaning against her shoulders, fear loosened its grip. "I'll take good care of them," Martha said quietly, as if sensing the worry without being told. Anna inhaled, exhaled, and nodded. "I believe you." And as she stepped back into the cold Cleveland evening, she realized, strangely, undeniably, that she did. Cleveland General Hospital was already buzzing when Anna slipped through the employee entrance, breathless from the bus ride and the rush across icy sidewalks. The moment she stepped inside, fluorescent lights washed over her, revealing the exhaustion she hadn't been able to hide for weeks. She headed toward the nurse's station, hoping her late arrival might go unnoticed. It didn't. "Dr." Leonard Hayes swept into the hallway like a chill of his own, clipboard tucked under one arm, irritation radiating from every step. His gaze landed on Anna instantly. "McBride," he snapped, loud enough for 2 nearby nurses to pause what they were doing. "You're 20 minutes late." Anna swallowed, keeping her voice steady. "I'm sorry, Dr. Hayes. My baby was running a fever this morning." He cut her off with a dismissive scoff. "Save it. Everyone here has problems. The hospital doesn't stop running because your personal life is messy." Heat rose to Anna's cheeks. She lowered her eyes, unable to argue. Hayes continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "Next time, plan ahead. Or perhaps consider whether this job is too demanding for someone in your circumstances." A murmur of discomfort spread among the staff. No one stepped in. Anna forced out a quiet, "Yes, doctor," and moved past him, her chest tightening. She had endured rude supervisors before, but Hayes had a way of making every word land like a blow, sharp, intentional, humiliating. Her shift dragged on with relentless pressure. Every task she completed seemed to draw criticism. Hayes pointed out imaginary mistakes, hovered over her shoulder, and corrected her in tones loud enough for Patience to hear. Even his compliments carried barbs. Finally doing it right, McBride. Took long enough. Anna kept her head down, reminding herself that losing this job would mean losing the only steady income her children had. Still, every reprimand chipped away at the fragile calm she had built that morning. During a brief lull, she found herself in the supply room restocking linens. Denise Parker, a longtime coworker and one of the few people who treated her with genuine kindness, slipped inside behind her. "Hey," Denise said gently. "I saw the way Hayes spoke to you. You okay?" Anna nodded, though her eyes stung. "I just need today to end." Denise hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Earlier you mentioned a woman helping with the kids. Someone you barely know." Anna froze. "Her name is Martha. She seems good. The kids like her." "Anna," Denise said, choosing her words carefully, "I don't want to scare you, but you can't trust strangers like that, especially with 4 little ones. What if she's unstable or dangerous? I mean, you met her on the street." The linen in Anna's hands slipped slightly. Doubt, sharp and cold, slid through her chest. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. "There's always a choice," Denise countered, soft but firm. "Just be careful. People aren't always who they seem." When Denise left, Anna stood motionless in the narrow room, her pulse pounding in her ears. She pictured Colin holding the baby, Emily and Grace curled against Martha's side, Martha's steady hands, her sorrowful eyes. The warmth she had felt earlier now twisted into fear. What if Denise was right? What if she had made the worst mistake of her life? As she returned to her shift, each passing hour fed the anxiety growing inside her. And no reprimand from DR. Hayes compared to the terror quietly unraveling in her chest, the possibility that she had left her children in danger. By the time Anna turned onto her street, her hands were trembling around the strap of her bag. The December air bit at her cheeks, but she barely felt the cold. Every terrible possibility Denise had planted in her mind replayed, like flashes in a nightmare. Her kids crying alone, the infant's fever spiking, the apartment ransacked, a stranger disappearing into the night with the little she owned. She jogged the last flight of stairs to her unit, heart hammering. For a split second, she stood frozen outside the door, afraid to open it. Then she pushed inside. What she saw made her stop short. The apartment, usually cluttered after a long night, was spotless. Not just tidy, but scrubbed, gleaming in a way she hadn't seen since before her husband died. Toys were stacked, blankets folded, dishes washed and drying on the rack. A faint scent of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen. Before she could speak, her baby let out a happy squeal. Martha appeared in the living room doorway with Max on her hip, the little boy wrapped in a clean sleeper. His cheeks were pink, his eyes bright. No sign of the fever that had terrified Anna that morning. "He's doing better," Martha said softly. "Temperature's normal." Anna's knees nearly buckled. She reached for her son, pressing her lips to his forehead again and again, unable to stop the tears that rose. From the bedroom, the older children burst out with delighted shouts. "Mom, Mom, look, Grandma Martha made pancakes, and we took baths, and she read us stories." Their voices filled the apartment with a warmth Anna hadn't felt in months. She blinked hard, taking it all in, the clean faces, the brushed hair, the quiet joy. Her children, who had endured so much, were glowing. And Martha was standing among them like she had belonged there all along. "I hope I didn't overstep," Martha said, hands clasped, almost shy. "I just thought you worked too hard. And they're such sweet kids." Anna swallowed back emotion. "Overstep? Martha, you," her voice cracked. "You saved my morning. My whole world, really." Martha's eyes softened, the lines around them deepening with something like gratitude. "It was nothing, dear." But it wasn't nothing. Not to Anna. Not even close. A few minutes later, breakfast sizzled on the stove. Pancakes, just like the children had said, golden and fluffy in a way Anna had never managed. She made tea while the kids chatted around Martha, who seemed completely at ease, as if she had always been part of this household. When the children took their plates to the living room, Anna finally asked the question that had been lingering since the night before. "Martha, how did you learn to do all this? The cooking, the childcare. You just seem so natural." Martha stared into her cup for a long moment. When she looked up, her expression had changed. Quieter, more fragile. "I don't remember everything," she admitted. "There are pieces of my life missing. Weeks, maybe months. I woke up in a drainage ditch outside the city. My head was bleeding. No purse, no ID, no memory of how I got there." Anna's breath caught. "Did someone hurt you?" "I think so," Martha whispered, though her eyes clouded as if the truth sat just out of reach. "But I don't know who, or why. All I know is I haven't felt safe anywhere since." Something inside Anna shifted, an ache, a recognition. Two women carrying more than their lives could hold. Two mothers, without support, trying to survive a world that rarely offered kindness. She reached across the table and touched Martha's hand. "You're safe here." For the first time, Martha smiled in a way that reached her eyes, and the fragile thread of trust between them tightened into something real. For the next 2 days, the apartment felt strangely lighter, warmer, steadier, as if someone had opened a window and let in a season Anna had forgotten existed. The children hovered around Martha with the kind of effortless affection usually reserved for relatives they adored. And Martha moved through the home with a gentle purpose, adjusting as if she had always known where everything belonged. Still, Anna hesitated to ask what she truly wanted. A part of her feared sounding desperate. Another part feared hearing Martha say no. One evening, as Martha folded laundry with the kids chattering around her, Anna finally gathered her courage. "Martha," she began softly, "I've been thinking, and I'd like you to stay with us, not just for a few days, as part of our home, as our caregiver, full time." Martha froze mid-fold, her eyes widening. "Oh, Anna, no. I couldn't impose on you like that. I've already taken too much." Before Anna could respond, Grace darted forward and wrapped her arms around Martha's waist. "Please don't go. You're our grandma now," Emily added, clinging to her other side. Even Colin, usually reserved, looked up from the table. "We really want you here." The room fell quiet, and a tremor passed over Martha's face, something between disbelief and longing. She pressed a hand to her chest as if steadying a fragile heartbeat. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I've never had anyone want me, anywhere." Anna stepped closer. "We do. We want you here. And it helps us, too. I can't do this alone." For a moment, Martha seemed to fight back tears. Then she nodded, slow and trembling, surrendering to the one thing she had been denied for who knows how long, belonging. "All right," she murmured. "If you really want me, I'll stay." The children erupted into cheers, and Martha laughed, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. In that instant, something shifted in the apartment, not a guest joining the home, but a missing piece returning to it. From that day forward, life found a new rhythm. Breakfasts were warm and ready before anyone woke. The kids' clothes were washed, folded, and organized with a precision Anna hadn't managed since becoming a widow. Evenings grew calmer. Bedtime became a peaceful routine rather than a battlefield. For the first time in months, Anna felt her shoulders loosen when she walked through the door after a grueling shift. Even Denise, initially skeptical, softened. "She's got a good soul," Denise admitted during a break. "You got lucky, Anna. Really lucky." Anna nodded, knowing just how true that was. But life had a way of delivering storms just as the skies began to clear. One Friday afternoon, Anna noticed her oldest son, Colin, sitting unusually still on the couch, sweat beading on his forehead. He pressed a hand to his chest, grimacing. "Colin? Honey, what's wrong?" He tried to brush it off. "Just tired, Mom." "It's fine." But it wasn't. Over the next several days, the episodes repeated: dizziness, chest discomfort, shortness of breath. Alarmed, Anna took him to a pediatric cardiologist at the clinic. The diagnosis struck like a blow to the ribs. A congenital heart defect, one that had gone unnoticed until now, requiring surgery. Not optional, not someday, soon. As the doctor outlined the risks and the staggering cost, Anna felt her breath disappear. She had finally found stability. She had finally found help. She had finally found some fragile rhythm of hope. And suddenly, she was standing at the edge of a cliff again, staring down at the impossible. Anxiety, old and familiar, curled its fingers tightly around her heart. The miracle Martha brought into their home was real, but so was the next battle waiting for them. For nearly 3 weeks, the apartment lived in a rhythm that felt almost sacred. Mornings were warm and unhurried. Evenings were quiet, filled with the soft hum of stories, homework, and Martha's steady voice guiding the children through routines that once left Anna exhausted to the point of tears. For a brief moment, life resembled something close to peace. But beneath the calm, a storm was brewing. Colin's heart episodes grew more frequent. Some days he pushed through them with a brave smile. On others, he sat pale and trembling, clutching his chest until the wave passed. Martha kept a constant eye on him, reading every flicker of discomfort in his face. When Anna brought him for a follow-up appointment, the cardiologist didn't try to soften the truth. "The surgery can't wait much longer," he said, clasping his hands in front of him. "Without intervention, the risks escalate sharply. We need to move quickly." Anna nodded, though her pulse hammered in her ears. She already knew the urgency. What she hadn't fully confronted was the cost. The numbers he mentioned felt impossible. The kind of medical bill that crushed families with far more resources than hers. Afterward, on the bus ride home, Colin leaned against her shoulder. "Mom, am I going to be okay?" She swallowed hard, smoothing his hair. "Yes, sweetheart. I'll make sure of it." But her voice shook and he heard it. Back at the apartment, Martha was waiting at the door. One look at Anna's face was enough. She shepherded Colin to the sofa, tucked a blanket around him, and returned to Anna, her eyes sharp with concern. "Tell me," she said quietly. Anna broke. Not fully, just enough for her shoulders to sag, enough for her breath to tremble. "They need to operate soon. But the cost. Martha, I don't know how anyone is supposed to afford something like this." Martha cupped Anna's face in both hands, steadying her. "Listen to me. That boy is not going to suffer. We'll find a way." "We?" Anna whispered, surprised. "Yes," Martha said, firm and immediate. "We." Over the next days, Anna worked every shift she could beg for, double shifts, overnight shifts, temporary fill-ins. She scrubbed floors in unused wings, cleaned equipment rooms, volunteered for unpleasant tasks nobody else wanted, anything that earned even a few extra dollars. But no matter how hard she tried, the mountain before her barely budged. She contacted charities, applied for medical grants, waited on hold with insurance representatives who spoke in circles. Denise asked around the hospital, but returned each time with a sympathetic shake of her head. At night, when the children slept, Anna sat at the kitchen table, drowning in forms and denial letters, her hands tangled in her hair. Martha always found her there. "You're not sleeping again," she would say, pouring tea without asking. No mother should have to carry this alone. Sometimes Anna cried. Sometimes she couldn't. Sometimes she simply sat there, letting Martha's presence anchor her. Yet even as the financial dread consumed her, another quiet mission tugged at her thoughts. Martha deserved answers. She deserved a past. She deserved a family if they existed at all. So late at night, while searching medical assistance programs, Anna also posted messages in missing persons forums, scrolled through social media groups, and emailed shelters, hoping someone might recognize Martha's face. She told no one, not even Martha, because love wasn't only about who stayed. It was also about giving someone back the life they lost. And as Colin's health grew more fragile by the day, Anna clung to that truth. 2 battles at once, neither of which she could afford to lose. Anna's late-night search efforts grew into something more organized than she ever expected. What began as a quiet attempt to honor Martha's dignity soon became a full-scale mission to restore a life that had been torn apart. She started with local shelters, emailing each one with a carefully written message and a recent photo of Martha, taken discreetly after Martha had braided Emily's hair and laughed at something the little girl said. Anna didn't want Martha to know she'd taken it for this purpose. She simply wanted her to look like herself. Warm, gentle, alive. Shelters replied with polite regret. No one recognized her. Anna tried hospitals next, contacting social workers and asking if any missing persons cases matched Martha's age or description. Again, nothing. Still, she pushed forward. She posted Martha's picture in online community forums, missing persons groups, and volunteer networks scattered across Ohio and neighboring states. She didn't attach Martha's name, because Martha didn't truly have one to give. Instead, she wrote, seeking information about a woman who may have suffered memory loss, possibly injured around 12 months ago. Please reach out if you recognize her. The responses poured in, but most were dead ends, false leads, hopeful strangers trying to help, and the occasional unkind message urging Anna to stay out of stranger drama. But Anna kept searching, because she knew in her bones, that Martha hadn't simply drifted into homelessness. Something terrible had happened to her, and someone, somewhere, had to be missing her. 3 weeks into the search, while Anna was finishing her shift, her phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Alexander. I volunteer with several missing persons groups. I saw your post, and I might have information. Please call me when possible." Anna stepped into an empty hallway, heart pounding, and dialed immediately. A man with a calm, steady voice answered. "Thank you for reaching out," he said. "I think someone has been looking for your woman." Anna gripped the phone tighter. "Who?" "A man named Matthew Coleman. He posted a missing person request around a year ago. His mother disappeared while traveling. His description fits almost exactly: age, height, appearance, even the detail about memory problems after an injury." Anna closed her eyes. Relief swept through her, sharp, overwhelming, tinged with fear. "Are you sure?" "I can't be certain," Alexander said, "but it's the closest match I've seen. He still checks the forums occasionally. I've already contacted him. He'd like to meet you." Her breath shook as she whispered, "Thank you, thank you." When she got home, Martha was setting the table for dinner, humming softly while the children played nearby. The sight warmed Anna and tightened something deep in her chest. How could she tell this woman, who had survived so much, that her life was about to change again? After the children went to bed, Anna brewed tea and sat with Martha on the couch. "There's something I need to talk to you about," she said gently. Martha's hands stilled around her cup. "Is it Colin? Is he worse?" "No," Anna said quickly. "It's something else. I've been trying to find your family." Surprise flickered across Martha's face, then something like fear. "Oh, Anna," she whispered. "Why would anyone look for me?" "Because you matter," Anna replied. "And because someone has been looking for you. A man reached out today. He thinks your son filed a missing person report last year." Martha stared at her, breath caught, eyes shining with disbelief. "My son?" Anna nodded. "His name is Matthew, and he wants to meet." Silence settled between them. fragile, trembling, full of hope and dread. For the first time since she stepped into Anna's life, Martha looked both older and impossibly young, like a woman who had lost everything and suddenly found a glimmer of what she thought was gone forever. "Then I suppose," Martha whispered, voice breaking, "it's time I remember who I was." 2 days later, Anna found herself riding the rapid transit toward Shaker Heights, a part of Cleveland she had only ever seen in passing. Quiet, tree-lined streets, stately homes, and the kind of wealth her own neighborhood would never know. She checked the address again, feeling underdressed in her thrift store coat. But this was too important to second-guess. She had to meet the man who might be Martha's son. The Uber dropped her in front of a stone-front colonial with warm lights glowing behind tall windows. For a long moment, Anna simply stood there, breath fogging in the cold, gathering the nerve to ring the doorbell. When it opened, a man in his mid-30s stepped out, well-dressed, sharp-featured, carrying the exhausted alertness of someone who had lived with grief too long. "Are you Anna?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." "You must be Matthew." His gaze flicked to the folder in her hands, the one containing Martha's photograph. "You said on the phone you had information." Anna opened the folder and handed him the picture. Martha was smiling faintly in the kitchen, a bowl of pancake batter in front of her, flour dusted on her sleeve, an image Anna had taken on a morning that suddenly felt like a lifetime ago. Matthew stared at the photo. His breath left him in a single, ragged exhale. "That's her," he whispered. "That's my mother." He sank onto the entryway bench as if his legs could no longer hold him. His hands shook violently. He pressed the photograph to his chest. "I thought she was dead," he said hoarsely. I thought she was gone forever." Anna sat beside him, giving him time. When he finally looked at her again, she saw relief, disbelief, and something darker beneath the surface. "You said she doesn't remember anything?" he asked. "Very little," Anna replied. She woke up in a drainage ditch outside the city, head wound. No ID, no money. She wandered until some homeless individuals took her in. That's all she can recall. Matthew's jaw tightened, not in confusion, but in recognition. "She didn't disappear on her own," he said quietly. "I knew it. I knew something wasn't right." Anna leaned forward. "What happened?" Matthew rubbed his forehead, gathering the tangled pieces of memory. "My mother and we were close. She raised me alone after my father died. Last year, when I got engaged, she wasn't comfortable with my fiancé, Lauren. She said Lauren was manipulative, controlling. Something in her just didn't sit right." Anna heard the hesitation in his voice, not doubt, but shame. "And I didn't listen," he admitted. "I thought Mom was overreacting. Then she insisted we set up a prenup. She said she wanted to protect the family assets my father left." Lauren exploded, accused Mom of trying to ruin the wedding. He took a shaky breath. The day before Mom disappeared, they had a fight, a bad one. Mom told Lauren she wouldn't bless the marriage unless the prenup was signed. Anna felt her stomach drop. "And then your mother left town?" "She said she needed a few days away. I drove her to the bus station myself. After that, nothing." He looked at Anna with a haunted expression. "I thought she had a heart attack somewhere, or ran away from the stress. But memory loss, injuries." His voice cracked. "Someone hurt her, and I let myself believe she just walked away." Silence thickened between them. Then Matthew stood abruptly. "Take me to her." There was no hesitation, only urgency. Anna nodded and led him outside. Snow was beginning to fall, quiet and steady, dusting the windshield of his car. As they buckled in, Anna felt a tremor of fear and hope mix inside her. Matthew drove fast, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. He wasn't just going to see his mother. He was going to uncover the truth someone had tried very hard to bury. By the time Matthew's car pulled up to Anna's building, The snowfall had thickened into a soft, white curtain, settling over the cracked sidewalks and dim street lamps of the neighborhood. Anna led the way up the narrow stairwell, her pulse echoing in her ears as she unlocked the apartment door. Inside, the children were coloring at the kitchen table, while Martha hummed quietly over a pot of soup. It was an ordinary scene, warm, peaceful, safe, until the door opened fully. Martha turned. Her wooden spoon fell from her hand and clattered onto the floor. She stared at Matthew as if seeing a ghost. He stepped forward slowly, terrified of breaking whatever fragile reality held them both in place. "Mom," he whispered. The sound of his voice shattered her paralysis. Martha brought trembling fingers to her mouth, releasing a choked sob. "Matthew, my boy. My beautiful boy." He crossed the room in 2 steps and wrapped her in his arms. She clung to him with desperate force, her tears soaking into his coat as she whispered his name over and over. Matthew held her just as tightly, shoulders shaking, anchoring her as though terrified she would vanish again. Anna quietly ushered the children to the bedroom, giving mother and son space. When the door clicked shut, Martha drew back, cupping Matthew's face with trembling hands. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered. "I thought you were dead," he replied, voice breaking. "I spent a year grieving something that wasn't true." They sank onto the couch together, still holding hands as if afraid to release the moment. Martha's breathing steadied, but her eyes were clouded with something deeper, something that had been buried too long. "I remember," she said softly. "The pieces, they're coming back." Matthew stiffened. "Tell me." Martha closed her eyes. "I was at your house that night. Lauren was there. She was furious about the prenup, said I was ruining her life. I told her I wasn't signing anything, but I wouldn't let her marry you without protections either." Her voice quivered. She screamed that I was trying to destroy her future. Matthew swallowed hard. "Go on." I stepped outside to clear my head. The street was quiet, but then I heard footsteps. 2 men. They called my name. Her fingers dug into the blanket beside her. I thought they were from a security company or something Lauren hired. But their faces, she opened her eyes wide with fear. Cold, empty, wrong. Matthew's expression darkened, a storm gathering behind his eyes. One of them told me, "You shouldn't meddle with people who know what they want." Martha's voice broke. I turned to run, but they grabbed me, held me. One of them hit me on the back of the head. She lifted a shaking hand to the faint scar concealed beneath her hair. I fell. I remember Lauren's voice next. She wasn't screaming, she was whispering. Terrified, desperate. Martha swallowed. "Make sure she doesn't interfere again," she said. "Make sure he doesn't know." Matthew's whole body went rigid. Blood drained from his face. "She ordered them," he said, his voice hollow. She orchestrated all of it." Martha nodded weakly. I woke up in a ditch near the freeway. Rain pouring down. I couldn't remember who I was. I thought maybe I had died. Matthew pressed both hands to his face, shaking with fury, grief, and guilt. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. I should have listened." Martha touched his arm gently. "You had no way of knowing." But Matthew wasn't listening anymore, not fully. Something colder had taken root behind his eyes. Someone had tried to erase his mother, and he wasn't going to let it go unanswered. Matthew barely slept that night. Every word his mother whispered replayed in his mind. Lauren's threats, the men's voices, the blow to her head. By dawn, he was pacing his living room, phone in hand, calling the only people he trusted enough to hear the truth. Detective Aaron Whitmore, an old college friend now working with the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office, arrived within the hour. Another friend, Assistant District Attorney Riley Grant, joined him. Matthew didn't bother with small talk. He showed them the photos, repeated Martha's recollections, and described the night she vanished. Both men listened with growing stillness. Martha Coleman's case was filed as a voluntary disappearance, Detective Whitmore said quietly. But he exchanged a glance with Riley. There was an open assault case around that same time frame. An unidentified female found near I-271. Severe head trauma. No ID, no purse. No phone. Matthew's entire body went cold. That was her, he said. The detective nodded slowly. We always suspected foul play, but without a name? No leads. Now, they had a name, a motive, a timeline, and a living victim. Whitmore immediately began organizing a formal statement. Martha, though shaken, insisted on telling them everything she remembered. Anna sat beside her, holding her hand through the entire recounting. When Martha finished, there was a long, weighted silence. Riley finally spoke. This isn't just assault. If her memories hold up, if we can corroborate with evidence or testimony, we're looking at attempted murder and conspiracy. Martha trembled. She wanted me gone because I cared about my son. Matthew put an arm around her. You didn't deserve any of this. The investigation moved at a speed that surprised even Anna. Old reports were reopened. Forensic records were matched to Martha's medical scars. Traffic camera footage from that week, previously dismissed, was reviewed with new context. Patterns emerged. Two men, later identified as acquaintances of Lauren's brother, appeared repeatedly near the bus station the night Martha vanished. By the third day, the case was no longer dormant. It was active, very active. When Lauren was brought in for questioning, she laughed at first, dismissive, polished, confident. But as the detectives laid out photos, timelines, statements, and surveillance stills, her composure began to crack like ice beneath pressure. Then came Martha's voice from the next room, recorded hours earlier. I heard her say, "Make sure she doesn't interfere again." That was the last thing I remember before the pain. Something inside Lauren buckled. She stared at the table, jaw trembling, hands shaking. When she finally spoke, the words spilled out in gasps. Fear, excuses, twisted justifications. But underneath all of it was the truth. She had ordered the attack. She had told the men to scare Martha. Then panic drove it further. By the end of the interrogation, Lauren had given authorities the names of both attackers, plus her brother's involvement in arranging the plan. Arrests happened within hours. Charges followed: attempted murder, conspiracy to commit assault, aggravated assault, obstruction, tampering with evidence. The news hit Shaker Heights like a thunderclap. Lauren's carefully crafted social world collapsed overnight. But Martha finally was free. In the days that followed, Matthew moved his mother into his home. He replaced the guest room furniture with soft blankets and warm colors, determined to rebuild every moment she had lost. Martha walked through the space slowly, touching framed photos of Matthew's childhood, whispering that she felt like she had returned from another life. But she didn't forget Anna. Anna and the children were invited often, so often that the home began to feel shared, stitched together by gratitude and the quiet strength that had grown between all of them. It wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of a new, extended family built from loss, survival, and the truth finally brought into the light. Winter melted slowly into a gray Ohio spring, the kind that arrived more with rain and thaw than sunshine. But for Anna, the world felt lighter than it had in years. The shift began the morning Matthew asked to speak with her privately, his expression steady but warm. "I've reviewed Colin's medical file," he said gently. "I spoke with Dr. Feldman at Cleveland Children's. Anna, I want to cover the cost of his surgery." The words didn't register at first. Anna blinked, certain she'd misheard. You don't have to." "I know," he said softly. "But I want to. Your kindness brought my mother back to me. Let me give something back to your family." Her knees felt weak. For months, she had lived with the dread of watching her son's health decline, knowing she couldn't afford to save him. Now, hope, real, solid hope, stood in front of her. When Anna began to cry, Matthew simply stepped forward and held her while she finally let years of fear loosen their grip. The surgery was scheduled quickly. On the morning of the operation, Cullen was brave but pale, clutching the stuffed bear Martha had sewn for him from old fabric scraps. Anna kissed his forehead, whispering courage into his hair. Martha wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steadying her, while Matthew handled every conversation with the surgical team. Hours passed like a lifetime. Then Dr. Feldman emerged, mask lowered, eyes smiling. He did beautifully. The repair was successful. Anna's legs nearly gave out from relief. Matthew caught her elbow. Martha cried openly, hands shaking with gratitude. When Cullen finally woke in recovery, Anna sat beside him, brushing hair from his forehead, overwhelmed by how peaceful he looked. It was the first time in months she saw her son breathe without strain. For the first time in years, she believed life might truly get better, and it did. Within weeks, Anna's world transformed. She wasn't drowning anymore. Work felt manageable again. Bills could be paid. Her children laughed more, slept more, worried less. The apartment, once chaotic and heavy with exhaustion, now felt like a home stitched together with warmth. Martha blossomed too. She became an honorary grandmother, not just in name, but in presence. She read bedtime stories, braided hair, patched knees after playground tumbles, and filled the walls with soft humming that made the tiny apartment feel strangely magical. And Matthew, he didn't vanish after helping. Instead, he appeared often, sometimes with bags of groceries, other times with books for the children, and sometimes simply with quiet companionship. He joined dinners, helped with homework, watched movies with the kids, and talked with Anna long after the dishes were washed. They didn't rush anything. Their connection grew the slow, steady way healing does, gently, without forcing, built from gratitude, shared burdens, and the quiet recognition of someone who understood loss and restoration in equal measure. Months later, on an early summer evening, Matthew invited Anna and the children to Cleveland's Edgewater Park. Lake Erie shimmered under a pale gold sky. They walked along the shoreline while Martha sat on a bench nearby, smiling like she already knew what was about to happen. Matthew stopped near the water, turning to Anna with a look that held no hesitation. "Anna," he said, voice low but certain, "you and your children saved my mother. You brought her home to me. You brought light back into our lives." He exhaled softly. "I want to build a life with you, with all of you, if you'll have me." The children froze, eyes wide. Martha covered her mouth with both hands, tears already forming. Anna felt her heart swell, not with the fear she once carried, but with something far deeper: homecoming, safety, love. "Yes," she whispered, then stronger, "Yes, Matthew." He slipped the ring onto her finger as the children cheered and Martha cried openly behind them. For the first time in her adult life, Anna felt the future open, steady, safe, and filled with love she no longer believed she deserved. But now she knew she did. The courtroom was silent when the judge read the sentences. The two men who had attacked Martha sat rigidly at the defense table, their expressions flat but resigned. Months of investigation, testimony, and irrefutable evidence had brought them exactly here. On the charge of attempted murder, the judge announced, "I hereby sentence you to 12 years in state prison." Neither man looked at Martha, but Martha looked at them, steady, unshaken. No longer the terrified woman who woke in a drainage ditch with no memory. She sat between Matthew and Anna, her hands folded calmly in her lap, her dignity restored. Lauren Field's sentencing followed days later. Her fall had been swift and absolute. The socialite veneer she once wore so confidently had collapsed under the weight of her confession and the public outrage that followed. For conspiracy to commit assault and obstruction of justice, the judge stated, you are sentenced to 5 years in state custody, with eligibility for rehabilitation programs. Lauren cried openly, her once polished life in ruins. None of it softened the impact for Martha, who watched from the gallery with a quiet sorrow, not vengeance but closure. Justice at last had come, and it didn't stop there. News of the case stirred scrutiny in unexpected places, including Cleveland General Hospital. Dr. Leonard Hayes, who had tormented Anna for years, came under investigation after several nurses filed complaints emboldened by Anna's story. An internal review uncovered a pattern of misconduct: intimidation, verbal abuse, discriminatory scheduling, and retaliation against vulnerable staff. Within weeks, he was suspended. Within months, he was publicly disgraced and stripped of his supervisory duties. For Anna, the news felt like a knot slowly loosening in her chest. She hadn't sought revenge. She hadn't even filed a complaint. But truth had a way of surfacing in waves, one revelation clearing the path for another. Life began to rearrange itself into something steady, warm, and whole. Her wedding to Matthew was small, intimate, whispered into existence one mild autumn afternoon beneath the canopy of a maple tree in a quiet Cleveland garden. Martha walked down the aisle with her son, her steps measured but filled with pride. The children scattered flower petals, laughing as the breeze carried them into little spirals. Anna wore a simple ivory dress, radiant not from fabric but from peace. When she and Matthew exchanged vows, it felt less like a beginning and more like the final piece of a long, painful puzzle sliding into place. Soon after, they moved into a warm, light-filled home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, big enough for all 4 children, with a backyard where they could run and play. The house didn't feel extravagant, it felt earned. It felt like safety rebuilt from the ground up. Anna rented out her old apartment, using the income to finally build financial stability, the kind she had never known. Every month, she placed a small portion into savings, smiling each time she did. Survival had transformed into security. Martha, meanwhile, received a civil settlement connected to her case. Instead of spending it on herself, she quietly donated a significant portion to a local animal shelter she visited often with the children. Seeing her name engraved on a brass donor plaque brought tears to her eyes. "It's good to give life somewhere," she said softly. And the family, bound not by blood alone but by rescue, chance, and destiny, celebrated their first holiday season together in the new home. The children hung handmade ornaments. Martha baked her late husband's favorite cookies. Matthew lit the fireplace. Anna watched it all through grateful eyes, knowing how impossibly far they had come. They had survived tragedy. They had rebuilt through kindness. And now, at last, they lived in peace. A life restored, a future earned, a family complete.